This is session number 5. We will be looking at verses in the second chapter 9 through 23 tonight. So if you want to go ahead and get your Bibles, we'll get started. Tonight, kind of the title is Truth or Consequences is going to be the title tonight. So let's start off by looking at verse 9. If you do not make known the dream to me, there's only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you give me its interpretation. All right, that's a lot going on right there in verse 9. Now, just remember what's happened is previously Nebuchadnezzar has called in his cabinet of his brain power, and he's asked them to tell him interpret a dream. But before they can interpret it, they've got to tell him the dream that he had and then interpret it. And that's kind of a test to see if they are as good as what they say they are. And right now they're kind of fighting for their lives. They're trying to buy time. They're trying to persuade Nebuchadnezzar that what he's asking is just unrealistic. And so let's look here at verse 9 once again. Remember, Nebuchadnezzar is extremely disturbed about what has happened within this dream. And he is prepared to eliminate this brain power of the world's greatest kingdom if they cannot come to some understanding and explain to him. Basically, what he's saying is, don't take me for a fool, because that's exactly what you're doing. Because if you don't make it known to me, this dream, there's only one decree. And that decree was that they would be killed. So then we look at verse 10, and it says this. The Chaldeans, remember that was the wise men, answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astronomer, or Chaldean. So what are they saying? They're pleading. They're like, look, we can't read your mind. Why do you think that we can read your mind? Nobody's ever asked that. That's unrealistic for you to do that. They told them that it was not humanly possible, and they were correct. It is not humanly possible for someone to do that. All right? They were right, but God can, and we're going to see that happen here in just a little bit. See, their gods were stone and wood and nothing. There's no breath in their gods. Their gods were names, basically. There was no breath within them, iron, gold, whatever it may be. All right? And so they had no understanding of this. But God was using Nebuchadnezzar. And basically what God was doing was he was pointing Nebuchadnezzar to him and showing him that the fools that he had around him, okay, and that God was going to be the one that could answer his questions. So we look in verse 11, and it says this. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. And I just talked about that. So they're trying to explain to Nebuchadnezzar that, the gods can't even tell us because they're not of flesh. So what are they? They're stone. They're nothing is what they really are. Because they did not know the one true God. I always like looking at things like this, but if you look there in verse 11, look at gods. It's lowercase g, okay? Gods. Might as well be dogs, all right, as far as that goes. So then we go down, and now we start to see Nebuchadnezzar. And things are going to take a really bad turn here for him. For this reason, the king was angry. Remember, he was scared. All right, he was very confused. He was asking for help. And we know that he was already very temperamental. And basically, they were telling him, hey, we can't help you. But he was angry and very furious and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So you need to really pay close attention to this. The impact that this dream had on him, that he had decided that the best thing that he could do was what? Kill everybody. Get rid of everybody. Like that was going to solve his problem, but that is how disturbed Nebuchadnezzar was with what he had dreamt. All right, so now let's look at verse 13. So the decree went out and they began killing the wise men. So they actually started what? Killing them, rounding them up and killing these men. And they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them because they knew that Daniel and the other three were wise men as well. And so they knew that they were going to go to get them too, because they had been told to gather them all up and kill them all. So that was the decree that went out. We know just by what it says here in 13 that the killings began. They started to kill. Okay, so let's look at verse 14. It said, "Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon." So Daniel, I'm sure, had heard that they were killing the wise men. And so Daniel really sought him out to have this conversation with him to find out kind of what was going on. All right, very tense. I imagine, Daniel probably, approached him with a very soft tone, just because. Why? Because this guy was going out and doing the king's decree. He was killing. I'm sure he wasn't talking to a lot of them. All right. And so they were killing these wise men. So let's look at 15. He said, "He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, 'Why is the decree from the king so urgent?' Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel." So right here, Daniel kind of diffused a very tense situation. He was talking to somebody who was sent to kill him. All right. And he said, "Okay, so why is this so urgent? Why has the king made this decree?" Because obviously, whenever the king called in all of his magicians and his brain trust, Daniel and them were not included. They did not know what was going on. And so Daniel diffuses this very tense situation by probably his tone and then with that question. And then, obviously the hand of God is right there. And so Arioch went from coming to killing to explaining what was going on with the king's wishes. So he convinced Arioch, okay, just to settle down. All right. So let's look at 16. He said this, "So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, that he might tell the king the interpretation." So first of all, Daniel convinces Arioch to take him to the king, Nebuchadnezzar. Then he goes into the king, Nebuchadnezzar, the man who ordered him to die, and asks him for time. Now, isn't that kind of ironic? Because the wise men were trying to do the same thing. The problem was in the way in which they were doing it. They were basically telling the king that he was being totally irrational and that it didn't make sense. And they put the king on defensive. That's not what Daniel did. Look at 16 again. It said, "So Daniel went in and asked the king." He didn't berate the king. He didn't say anything other than, "Just give me time that I'm to be able to tell the king the interpretation." So that's the first time in all the king's conversations that he's had with wise men that somebody has came back to him with a little bit of hope. See, what all the others had come back to him with was just, "There's no way that we can do this." And so the king, we know the king was very moved. Why? Because he granted the request. He granted the request that Daniel made. So now let's look at 17 and 18. "Then Daniel went to his house." So Daniel left the king, left Nebuchadnezzar, went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from God. They might seek them. How? Prayer. All right. They got on their knees and they started praying. And he got his prayer circle together and said, "Look, guys, we really need to call out to God right here and find out his will. All right. We need his mercy right now. We need his mercy from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon." Now look at this, okay? Daniel and them prayed to God to give them discernment and wisdom, basically, so that Daniel and his companions, what? Might not perish. They were praying for their own life. All right? Be honest with you, not for others, for themselves. They did not want to perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. So that's what they did. They were asking for mercy. They didn't want to die. They asked God to spare them. That's basically what they said. And then we look down here at verse 19. It says this: Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. Okay, so God revealed to him the dream, all right, that Nebuchadnezzar had through this night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Now look at that. A prayer was answered. Okay, a prayer was answered. And what was the next thing that Daniel did? He blessed God. And I don't want us to miss this. I want us to read this entire prayer that Daniel has here from verse 20 to 23. It's a very uplifting. I think it's a great way for us to kind of pattern our own prayer life. So let me read this for us. Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and he raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells within him. I thank you and praise you, O God, my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have not now made known to me what we ask of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand. What an unbelievable prayer of thanksgiving for a prayer that had been answered. You know, kind of self-revelation here myself, you know, how often do we give thanks for answered prayers? Very quick to pray and move on. But so often whenever the prayers are answered, do we take time to stop and thank God for what he has done within our life, within that situation that we have within our own world? You know, I think that Daniel right here, for a 17-year-old to be giving us this much wisdom, he realized that the situation that he was in was very dire. Men were dying at that time. He had the boldness to stop the fury that was coming at him by just probably a calm voice, by simple reasoning. And then he did the one thing that we should all do more of, and that's pray. And he asked his friends to circle up with him and for them all to cry out for prayer, for help. I believe there was a guy in the garden one time that asked a bunch of guys to help him pray. They couldn't keep it up. They kept falling asleep on him. So, what does your prayer life look like? You know, whenever you have these answered prayers, do you thank God? Do you bless God? I hope you do. I hope you do. That we are so thankful. I mean, for myself, I just had another grandson. And, you know, I just thank God for his health. I thank God for the health of my daughter. And I thank God for the health of my son-in-law. You know, I thank him so much. I appreciate the blessing that has been bestowed upon us. But I realize that that gift is from him. So as we end here in this session, I just want you to think about the fury that came at him and the way in which Daniel approached the situation that was life and death at that time. He didn't lose his head. He went to God. So until next time, God bless.